Welcome, welcome, welcome to Leaders in Purpose. My name is Miss Cece Alexander, and I am your host for Leaders in Purpose. We cover several topics, including health, education, culture development, human rights, human services, economic development, political education, spiritual enlightenment. Because I believe that we're dimensional people, and we need to learn dimensionally. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I want to thank you for being here for my show today. I have a fantastic guest today, and no, he's not sitting right here. He is on the phone today, Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse. Now, I have Mr. Robert Beasley as my friend on Facebook, and I asked him about a fundraiser because I do help nonprofits make fundraisers as well as help people as well as help people participate in Millionaire Mindset business plan webinars with some of my business mentors, and it's an amazing. Go ahead and check me out on Facebook, Cece or Celelia Alexander, Celelia Alexander, to learn more. Anyway, he told me to get a hold of Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse. Now, Mr. Sasse doesn't need any help with fundraising, but Mr. Sasse does something very interesting. He has written, he's in this article about North Omaha, and it's so interesting about this is because Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse gives a different perspective about North Omaha. And, usually you have a lot of biased opinions, whether, very far to the right or far to the left, white supremacists, or, just all, negative or all bad. But Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse, he has a whole new perspective that I think that we need to, that I want to share with you, our audience. So, Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse, hi.
Well, hi, Cece. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. Now, I know how. The first question be asked. Well, why talk to somebody since you're not even living here in Omaha, Nebraska? Why talk to somebody who don't even live here about North Omaha? Can you answer that question for us, sir?
Yes, ma'am. It was quite a while ago that I lived in North Omaha, but I spent my childhood growing up there, and I graduated from North High School. I went to Macmillan and Miller Park School, and had all of my upbringing there. I owe a whole lifetime of work with my mentors and my people who raised me up in the neighborhood. I owe it back to North Omaha. So I have a project where I focus on the history of North Omaha. It's NorthOmahaHistory.com, and I've written over 450 articles focused on the history of North Omaha. I've created more than 80 podcasts focused on the history of North Omaha. And I'm talking about the people, the places, and the events that made North Omaha so spectacular, so powerful, and what it is today.
Wow, that is amazing. Oh my goodness. Now, when you say the history of North Omaha, North Omaha consists of a wide variety of neighborhood associations and wards and vicinities. What parts are you specifically talking about?
Cece, when 10 years ago when I started my project, I thought about North Omaha as broadly as I could. I thought about the negative media perceptions of North Omaha, and I thought of all of the kind of the hurtful ways that Omaha in general denied the history of North Omaha. And when I did that, I considered the entire region from Dodge Street all the way north up to the county border, from North 72nd Street all the way east over to the river. That whole northeast quadrant of Omaha is being North Omaha. I'm not playing around. I'm taking in every neighborhood along the way. And it's black folks, it's white folks, it's old people, it's young people, it's rich people, it's poor people, but it's everybody in one gigantic cauldron of history rather than just one group's history, just one people's history, just one economic group's history. It's everybody, everything.
Fantastic. So, wow. And you're so correct. North Omaha history is as vast as it is varied as it is. The stories are just contrasting, so as contrasting as they are the same, and as vast as they are varied. You're correct. We're that article that Mr. Beasley, Robert Beasley, had referred me to was the Saratoga area. Can you speak more about that and what makes that so amazing to you?
Well, let me tell you, I mean, it just begins. It goes so far back. You know, I don't know about your school, but when I was growing up, nobody talked about the history of North Omaha in schools. Instead, I had old people around me. I grew up by 24th and 4th, and I had all kinds of old folks around me who were like, they were talking about streetcars, they were talking about department stores and grocery stores, and the neighborhood just be hopping. You know, it was full and filled with energy. And I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And if you were at 24th and 4th in the 80s and 90s, it didn't look anything like that. There was no streetcar. You were hard pressed to find a bus. and the neighborhood was depressed and sad and just not doing well. And it's still not doing tremendous, but I wanted to find out about that history. So I dug back, and I went back and back. And one of the very first places that started to pop out in my research was this neighborhood that was around 24th and Ames.
Okay.
And 24th and Ames is really the heart of the Saratoga neighborhood. It's hard to imagine right now because of the way that it looks, but back in the day, there was so much commerce right at 24th and 4th. There were 4 different grocery stores at one time right at 24th and 4th. There was a movie theater at 24th and Ames. I'm sorry. There was 4 grocery stores, a movie theater, a hardware store, an appliance store, all around 24th and Ames. And that is the heart of the Saratoga neighborhood. But when I started my research, it went further back. And Cece, it turns out that the history of 24th and Ames and the Saratoga neighborhood goes back to 1854.
Wow.
In 1854, an old boy, Erastus Vetus, he came from New York State all the way to cross the river in 1854 to settle this town that he called Saratoga. He named it after Saratoga Springs in New York because there was a natural springs that was down by 16th and Locust. And Vetus, he named this town, and he got investors, and they built a town right there. What we know today is 24th and Ames. Back then, they called it the town of Saratoga. They started a school. First, there was a hotel there. It was called the Grand Hotel, gigantic old building. They had more than 24 houses within a year. They had a bank. They had a post office. They had a blacksmith. They had all kinds of things that were right there around 24th and Ames between 1854 and 1857. They built up.
Wow.
They had another area that was down by 16th and Locust. You know, down there by Carter Lake. And when you drop down the hill and you're right down by the lake, that's around 14th and Locust. And then you got Carter Lake Boulevard. That whole area was called Sulphur Springs. And that was going to be the
Sulphur, sulfur?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
That's because they had a spring down there that smelled like sulfur. Dang. But the water was really delicious, and people would come and they would get this sulfur water, and it would be a cure-all. It would be a tonic. And so way back in the day, they were bottling that as well.
Wow.
And there was a town that was down there that was run by the same guy that Erastus Beetle. And so old boy, he ran his town for 2 or 3 years, but then there was this gigantic financial crash in 1857, and it cleared out all the investors, and they closed the bank. Now, there was another town just to the north back then, and this town, its bank kept going. And today, if you want to go see it, drive up North 30th Street and look at the Bank of Florence, because it was built by the same dudes at the same time.
Wow, the Bank of Florence?
And plus, right?
Wow.
Right? And it's right there, so you can see it. But the bank in Saratoga was part of that. They were all connected. And then there was this other little town that was south of the town of Saratoga. And that little town actually took off, and it grew, and eventually took over the whole of Saratoga town, and everything became part of Omaha.
Okay.
But Saratoga was founded at the same time as Omaha.
Okay.
So you got this neighborhood that is so old and a town that existed there that was completely forgotten for like 150 years. And then I got on the internet. One of the things that I do, CC, I've got Facebook, and I've got North Omaha history on Facebook. I've got almost 4,000 people following me right there on Facebook to learn about North Omaha history. And I talk about Saratoga all the time.
Wow.
Because there's so much more history to it than even what I've just said. Because, Saratoga, it keeps going today. It's wonderful.
Now, when you talk about Saratoga, and you talk about a lot of people, there's people there that settled it. Are we talking about Europeans, or are we talking about the black Jews? Are we talking about the African Americans that came up from the South to work to get away from slavery, and they came here to build new lives? Which or all of them?
That's right. Well, I'll tell you one of the things that I think is, I mean, it fascinates me. You know, when I was in school in Omaha, they sent us from the Miller Park neighborhood down to Sherman for a period of time. And when we were down there at Sherman, we were learning about Omaha history. And they made such a big deal out of it. They took us to Fort Omaha to learn about the River City Roundup and just you know, kind of all this old history. Mm-hmm. But they made it sound so white. They made it sound so European and so American. You know, like you had to be riding a horse and from the Wild West, this whole thing. And so I didn't believe that. When I was growing up, I had mentors. Von Trimble Sr. was one of my mentors. Ernest Ned, who also goes by the name Edu Mahili, was one of my mentors, and they told me about Black history. Mm-hmm. They told me about Malcolm X being from Omaha. They told me about these kind of aspects that I didn't learn about in school, but because this was my neighborhood, it was part of the story, and I wanted to find out about it, so I researched it more. And one of the things that I found out about Saratoga is that one of the first African Americans in the Omaha area was a guy named Smith Coffey. That's what he was called, Smith Coffey. Mm-hmm. Old boy arrived in the 1860s and moved up to Sherman Street in Saratoga in the 1860s. Yeah, that's hard for me to imagine because everybody makes it sound like blacks didn't come to Omaha until the 1880s or 1890s, but this is the 1860s that old boy came up to Saratoga.
So you saying he's an older gentleman, an older man? Him and his family came up in 1860.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
And he was a blacksmith. He was a blacksmith, and his shop was right on what we call today's 16th Street. It used to be called Sherman Avenue.
Okay.
And old boy started his shop right by 16th and Locust in the Saratoga town.
Okay, so since he was a blacksmith, this older gentleman was a blacksmith. That means it was horse and buggy time.
That's right. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is 1860s, right? Cars didn't come around until about 1904.
Plus, he made weapons, repaired weapons as well, correct?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, anything having to do with metal, he was there pounding it out, as it were.
Wow.
And so that's one of the very first African American settlers in the entire Omaha area.
Now that's interesting, because Jim Crow kept black people from participating in a lot of trades, and that was one of them. So praise God that Jim Crow law was not effective here in Nebraska.
Well, let's actually be real about that. Nebraska and Omaha specifically had a lot of Jim Crow. Jim Crow was so present in Omaha for more than 100 years. And I'm not playing when I say that. I'm dead serious about it. I actually have a book that's coming out soon where I'll expose all of this and really reveal this history. But the fact of the matter, CC, is that Omaha was a heavily segregated city from the day that it was started. Mm. But they did have people who broke those formal and informal rules, and they really made it happen. Omaha's first segregated school, they called it a, quote, colored school. Started in 1865 and ran all the way until 1874, until African American activists in 1874 fought to have that school closed, and it worked. And they let African American students into Omaha school. That doesn't mean that they did it well, because we know still today, there's informal segregation in OPS. Mm-hmm. But at least we have this reality that when Omaha tried to have a formally segregated school, black activists stood up and said, this doesn't work, and they fought, and they actually beat it in 1874. So we know that that happened. But that doesn't stop the power of these stories of African Americans who broke that color line, who really made it happen, because they've been doing it since back then. I mean, we start with that first settler, and it goes all the way through and keeps going on for a very, very long time, and still happening today. That's history in the making.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's amazing. Let me just take a little break here. I just want to say, yes, again, my name is Miss Lady Sasse. My show is being hosted by my travel agency, Personally Yours Tour and Travel, and we do help you people with fundraisers. Go to www.myvortex, VORTEX, myvortex.com/dream come true. Again, it's www.myvortex365/dream come true. We help you, when you use that vortex, when you travel, you save 85 to 90% of that time. That savings that you have is so significant that you can use that amount that you save for your favorite charity, for your favorite team, for your favorite group, for your favorite everything. And to use this vortex is absolutely free. So go ahead on and check that out. Again, we have Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse. He grew up here in Omaha for years and years, and he has a podcast. He said you've done over 80 podcast shows and written over how many articles about North Omaha?
More than 450 articles.
Woo! 450 articles about North Omaha. Does this guy love North Omaha, or does he love North Omaha? And you could actually also catch him on Facebook. And what's it called on Facebook, your group?
It's just North Omaha History. It's on Facebook. It's on Instagram, both of them. And I work them every single day, and I'm sharing the facts over and over.
Okay, it's called North Omaha History on Facebook and Instagram. And you can see his dedication. He works that. He works it every single day. And what's so great about Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse, which I'm just now meeting him, he was referred to me by Mr. Richard Beasley, is that this gentleman, he is honest, he's true, he tells the whole story. It's not colored, it's not biased, it's not shaded. It's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth from his perspective. So, Mr. Sasse, we have about 10 more minutes. Please tell us more. It's just like amazing. Next time, I hope you could come again. I want to see if I could have some visuals. But right now, I'm just very interested in what you have to say. It's wonderful what you're saying. Go ahead on, continue.
I mean, there's so many things to uncover, but one of the things that I think is so important for folks to know is that right now there is a movement in Omaha. Right now, there's a movement in Omaha for everybody in North Omaha to gather our history and to claim it. You know, we got strong leaders in the neighborhood, in the community, who are trying to step up and make people understand how much history matters. We got folks like Preston Love, and he is doing so much work. Preston Love Jr. is doing so much work to have that happen. We have Eric Ewing at the Great Plains Black History Museum, and he's doing so much work to make that happen. There are so many other people who are stepping up for North Omaha's history and helping folks to really appreciate it and understand. You know, just yesterday, there was a ceremony at the Douglas County Courthouse in downtown Omaha. CC, did you know about this?
No, I did not. No, the ceremony about, no, what happened?
Check this out. You know, there's been a lot of news. Last year, there was a ceremony to remember a man named Will Brown. Will Brown, in 1919, was taken he was an African-American man who was accused of raping a white woman.
I remember Will Brown.
Right?
Yes,
right?
The little boy.
A mob of 20,000 people took Will Brown from the jail in the courthouse downtown and lynched him. But you know, folks have forgotten about that story, and I started pushing this thing 15 years ago. I put up an article on Wikipedia. media, and then I wrote another article for my website, NorthOmahaHistory.com. Then I started sharing across Facebook, and today, well, a year ago, they had a remembrance for Will Brown. There's a group of volunteers in Omaha who just finished putting up a historical plaque at Potter's Field. Potter's Field is out on State Street and Mormon Bridge Road by the entrance to the Forest Lawn Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Potter's Field was the poor people's cemetery where they buried people who couldn't afford a grave. That's where Will Brown is buried today. They just finished putting up a big historical plaque there in honor of the lynching of Will Brown. So that's a powerful thing.
They did that yesterday?
Now check this out. Just yesterday, they had a ceremony at the Douglas County Courthouse to honor another man who was lynched, taken from the Douglas County Courthouse and lynched in 1891. This man's name was George Smith, an African-American man.
Mm-hmm.
And listen to this story. He was accused of raping a white woman. The mob of 10,000 people showed up and they lynched him for it. In Omaha in 1891. Nobody remembered George Smith. Yesterday, the county, Douglas County, the city of Omaha, the Omaha NAACP, Nebraska Urban League, other folks showed up, and they had a ceremony to honor and remember what happened to George Smith.
Wow, I didn't know that was yesterday. I remember that was when they took him from the jail and they almost killed the mayor.
The mayor.
Too. Mm-hmm. It was so dramatic. Yes, I remember those.
Here's the thing, Cece. That one was 1990. That was the Will Brown lynching. Omaha is a terrible place where this extreme hatred of African Americans by white people has been going on since the beginning of the city. But Cece, people weren't talking about it for 150 years. White people especially didn't talk about it. But even when I was growing up, my mentors, the folks who lived around me, they didn't want to talk about it because they knew that Omaha wasn't okay with that. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I tried to do, I'm just a goofy white guy. Mm-hmm. You know, I grew up in the middle of this neighborhood, and it was hard. It was hard to grow up in the Miller Park neighborhood in the 80s and 90s because it was a rough place to be for a lot of reasons, especially when you're a goofy white kid. But that said, I still feel like I owe it to my neighborhood growing up to tell the truth about Omaha's history. And so what I do is use my white privilege to share this message with white people and other people, anybody who will listen to it. And it's an honor for me to have any folks step up, to have anybody step up and say, hey, I'm going to read your books, I'm going to read your articles, I'm going to listen to your podcast, and I'm going to really put the ear to this reality, this truth that you're trying to tell. And they go to NorthOmahaHistory.com and they read it. I got pictures that I share all the time. Cece, one of the things that I discovered is there, and I say I discovered this. I know that black folks have already known this for a long time, and I know that there are even white historians who have had, but they were quiet about it, right? Mm-hmm. And they just weren't sharing these stories. So this is why I'm using social media so much, is to make the public know about it, to make everyday people know about it. One of the things that I found was that the first African American politician from Omaha was elected to the Nebraska state legislature in 1892. The first black legislator in Omaha was elected in 1892. His name was Matthew Ricketts. Mm-hmm. Since then, more than a dozen African Americans have been sent to the Nebraska state legislature, including Ernie Chambers.
Ernie Chambers, honey. Ernie Chambers, and honey, y'all, he's doing write-in on the ballot. Write-in to the Ernie Chambers on that ballot, y'all, okay? Terry McKinney, write him in on that ballot, y'all, okay? Yes. Yes.
That's a powerful writing campaign. And it would be the first of its kind by an African-American politician to actually win and get into a seat if that happened.
Well, for Ernie Chambers, McKinney, you don't have to write in. He's on the ballot, but Ernie Chambers, you have to write him in. But you know, it's time to wrap up the show. My goodness, it just seems like we just got started. I'm going to go and check out all your information. I mean, whoa! And I'm looking forward to you being back here on the show. Thank you, Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse. It feels good. I mean, you know what? in this age of COVID-19, righteousness prevails. Every time you do something righteous, every time we do something good, we kill chaos. We kill hatred. We kill everything that is uncool. And I thank God for Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse, who says, I use white privilege to teach people, to tell people about what's true and what's right. And so, Brother Alani, I'm going to give you a standing ovation. Thank you so much for being on my show. Again, www.myvortex365/dream come true. Use that to for your fundraiser. Every time you go and book travel, the difference that you save, give it to your fundraiser. Right now I have two fundraisers on Facebook, St. Jude and Shriners. These organizations, they pay for medical care for youth where the parents don't have to worry about anything. I mean nothing. So please give. Thank you, Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse. Thank you, KPAO, Mr. Chris Craddock, Mr. Rock Wallace, and the KPAO team. Check out my show on Monday at 4:30 p.m. CST time, and also Fridays at 9 a.m. CST time. Peace, power, blessing, and prosperity to all. Again, Mr. Adam Fletcher Sasse, I'm so glad Mr. Richard Beasley told me about you. I am going to go ahead and go to Facebook, North Omaha, and NorthOmaha.com. You said North Omaha?
NorthOmahaHistory.com.
NorthOmahaHistory.com on Facebook and Instagram, and check him out. Peace, power, prosperity, y'all.